The airport was a blur of stranded travelers, their frustrations echoing through the terminal like the hum of tired bees. My flight home from Denver had been canceled. Fog, the attendant said, her polite smile strained by repetition. I could have booked a hotel, waited for tomorrow, but something tugged at me, an instinct, soft yet insistent. I wanted my own bed, my own walls. So I rented a car and drove through the rain-slick streets back to the house that had been my refuge for nearly 30 years. The driveway was half-lit when I pulled in. The porch light, which I always left on for comfort, was off. Odd. My son, Ethan, must have come by. He had a spare key, though I couldn't recall giving it to him. His wife, Chloe, was fond of helping with things, organizing closets, rearranging furniture, the sort of help that always left me uneasy. As I stepped from the car, I noticed the moving truck parked down the street, its engine idling. At first, I thought someone nearby was moving. But then I saw them, Ethan and Chloe, standing on my porch. Ethan was hunched over the door, a crowbar in hand. Chloe's voice cut through the damp air. Just hurry. We don't have much time before someone notices. My heart dropped. The world seemed to slow, each raindrop striking the pavement louder than the last. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My son, my own flesh and blood, was prying open my door like a stranger. Ethan, my voice cracked, sharp as lightning. He froze. Chloe turned first, her face draining of color. Ethan spun around, guilt and panic flashing across his features. Mom, wait, it's not what it looks like. But it was exactly what it looked like. Behind them, through the slightly ajar door, I saw boxes, my boxes, stacked neatly by the entryway. The same boxes I'd packed away after Richard died, filled with his watches, my mother's jewelry, and keepsakes that time couldn't dull. What are you doing here? I asked, each word trembling between fury and disbelief. Chloe stepped forward, her voice rehearsed. We were just helping you downsize. You said you wanted to sell the house eventually. I said eventually, not tonight, and certainly not without me. Ethan lowered the crowbar, his jaw tight. Mom, please. It's not what you think. But I knew. Deep down, I already understood this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal, carefully planned. The kind that doesn't happen overnight. The rain thickened, plastering my hair to my face, but I stood my ground. Get away from my door, I said quietly. Now. They hesitated, exchanging a glance that told me everything. I didn't know how deep their deceit went, but I knew this was only the beginning. As the moving truck rolled backward into the shadows, a chill settled in my chest. My canceled flight wasn't an inconvenience. It was a warning I wasn't meant to ignore. And whatever they had started tonight, I was going to uncover every piece of it. I didn't sleep that night. Even after Ethan and Chloe drove away, leaving wet tire marks down the street, the house felt violated. Every sound, the creak of the stairs, the whisper of rain against the window, seemed heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat in Richard's old chair, clutching my robe tight, the same one he used to tease me for wearing long after it had lost its color. Ethan hadn't always been this way. I remembered the boy who built birdhouses with his father, who used to sneak cookies from the kitchen and blame the cat. He had Richard's steady hands and my stubbornness, traits that once made me proud, until pride turned to ache. After Richard passed 3 years ago, Ethan had stepped in, or so I thought, to help manage the finances. I'd been recovering from a difficult surgery then, disoriented by painkillers and grief. When he brought over documents to make things easier, I signed them, barely glancing at the fine print. One of those papers, I later learned, gave him power of attorney. I hadn't thought twice. He was my son. Who else would I trust? But trust, I was beginning to learn, can be a weapon in the wrong hands. By morning, I convinced myself I needed proof before confronting him again. Maybe there was an explanation, something logical that would make this less monstrous. I brewed coffee, the bitter scent grounding me, and walked through the house. Cupboards stood slightly ajar, a trail of dust marked where jewelry boxes once sat. My heart twisted when I reached the study. Richard's watches were gone. Every one of them. That was when I called Mr. Klein, our family lawyer. He'd handled Richard's estate, an old friend who never minced words. Irene, he said after a long silence, I've been meaning to reach you. Your son's been making inquiries about the sale of your property. The words hit like a blow. My house? He doesn't have that right. I'm afraid he might, Mr. Klein replied. That power of attorney you signed gives him authority to manage or liquidate assets if deemed in your best interest. My best interest. The phrase sounded poisonous. After hanging up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, the ticking clock far too loud. Ethan wasn't stealing because he needed to survive. He was dismantling my life, one signature at a time. When the doorbell rang that afternoon, I half expected him to be there, contrite. But it was Chloe instead, her smile brittle. Ethan wanted me to check on you, she said sweetly, eyes flicking around the room as if cataloging what was left. I met her gaze calm now. Tell Ethan I'll be in touch, I said, my tone colder than I intended. As she left, I caught my reflection in the window, tired, yes, but not broken. They thought I was an old woman fading into the background. They were wrong. The next move would be mine. 2 days passed before I called Ethan. I needed the time. To think, to steady the anger that pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. When he finally answered, his voice was cautious, almost boyish. Mom? I was going to call you. No, I interrupted. You were going to sell my house. A pause stretched across the line, heavy and telling. Then, softly, can we talk in person? We met at a cafe downtown, neutral ground. I chose a seat by the window, where I could see him approach. Ethan arrived wearing the same jacket Richard had once owned, as if borrowing the memory of his father could soften what he'd done. Chloe wasn't with him. That was a small mercy. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, a nervous tremor in his hands. For a fleeting second, I almost felt sorry for him. Then he spoke. Mom, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. Chloe said we should move some things out before you got overwhelmed again. I just went along. Overwhelmed, I repeated. You broke into my home, Ethan. You stole from me. From your father. He looked down at his coffee. We needed money. The bills, Chloe's business. The words dissolved into excuses. Every syllable twisted deeper, each one carving away another piece of the boy I remembered. Do you know what you've done? I asked quietly. Those watches were your father's legacy. The jewelry was my mother's. And that document you made me sign after surgery, that was trust, not permission. His eyes lifted, full of something I couldn't name. Shame? Fear? I thought I could fix things before you found out. Sell a few things, pay off the debt, then put everything back. You can't put back what's been sold, I said. Not memories. Not respect. He rubbed his face, voice cracking. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't think it through. For the first time, I believed him. Not in his excuses, but in his regret. Yet regret didn't erase deceit. That evening, I met with Mr. Klein again. Together, we drafted the paperwork to revoke Ethan's power of attorney. I signed it with steady hands. Mr. Klein promised to file it first thing the next morning. Before leaving, he said quietly, You're handling this better than most would. I smiled faintly. I've had practice surviving disappointment. That night, I went through the house room by room, filming every corner with my phone. Evidence. Proof. The silence was thick, but beneath it ran something new, a quiet determination. Ethan's betrayal had opened a wound I hadn't realized was still tender. It wasn't just about the money or the things, it was about how easily love could be twisted into leverage. As I set the phone on the table, recording the empty space where Richard's watches once gleamed, I whispered, You'll have to earn your way back, Ethan. This time, with truth. And for the first time since that night on the porch, I felt in control again. By the end of that week, I had everything documented. The missing heirlooms, the revoked power of attorney, even the quiet footage of Ethan and Chloe at my door. Yet something inside me refused to rest. Betrayal has a way of echoing in unexpected corners of the mind. I needed to hear the truth, not the version Ethan had rehearsed, but the one he hid even from himself. So I invited them both over. A Saturday afternoon, sunlight slanting through the curtains, peaceful enough to disguise the storm gathering inside me. I brewed tea, laid out the china Richard had given me on our 20th anniversary. When they arrived, I greeted them with practiced calm. "Sit," I said. "We're going to talk." Chloe's eyes darted around the room like a trapped bird's. Ethan looked hollow, worn thin. I placed my phone on the table, the red recording light quietly blinking. "Let's start with honesty," I said. "How long has this been going on?" Ethan swallowed. "A few months. Maybe 6. "Try again." Chloe shifted, her polished composure cracking. "Almost a year," she admitted finally. Since after your surgery." The words hung between us. A year. A year of smiling visits, of false reassurances, of quiet theft under the guise of love. I turned to Ethan. "And the house? The documents?" He hesitated, then said, "Chloe found a buyer. We were going to sell before the market dropped. It was supposed to be temporary." "Temporary?" My voice cut through the air. "You were going to sell the home your father built with his hands. The place where you took your first steps, where I still talk to him when the nights get too long." Ethan's eyes filled, but I didn't soften. He needed to hear the full weight of what he'd done. "I trusted you," I continued. "When I was at my weakest, you turned that trust into a tool. You stole from your own blood." Chloe spoke then, her voice sharp with defensiveness. "We didn't mean harm. You just wanted what wasn't yours," I finished. "You thought age made me blind, but I see more clearly now than I have in years." Silence fell, the kind that stretches, fragile and final. Ethan lowered his head, tears spilling freely. For a moment I saw the boy he once was, the boy who used to cry when his goldfish died, who used to run to me with scraped knees. "Mom," he whispered, "I'll make it right. I swear it." I stood, gathering the papers from the counter, documents revoking every right he'd held over me. "You'll start by signing these. And then you'll leave." His signature trembled on the page. When he was done, he placed the pen down slowly, as if laying something to rest. As they walked out, I felt the house exhale. It wasn't victory I felt, it was mourning. The kind that comes when love breaks beyond repair. Still, somewhere deep inside, a quiet question remained. Could broken trust ever be mended, or only survived? The house felt different after they left, lighter in one way, lonelier in another. The quiet didn't bother me at first. It wrapped around me like a familiar shawl, steady and predictable. But as the days stretched on, the silence began to hum with questions I didn't want to answer. What did I lose that night? Just my son's trust, or something deeper? Perhaps the illusion that love, once given, could never turn against you. A week later, Ethan came back alone. No Chloe, no polished excuses. Just him, pale, thinner, eyes rimmed red. I opened the door, though part of me wanted to close it again. He stood on the porch where it had all begun. "I know I don't deserve to come in," he said quietly, "but I needed to tell you. I ended things with Chloe. She left when I couldn't pay her debts. I sold my car. I'm trying to make it right." The words trembled with something I hadn't heard in him for years, humility. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I studied his face, tracing the lines time and regret had carved there. "I'm not sure you can fix what's been done," I said, "but I believe in trying." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I'll earn it back, however long it takes." That night, I left the guest room unlocked for the first time in months. Ethan slept there, alone and quiet, like the boy who used to fall asleep after reading under the covers past bedtime. I didn't forgive him. Not fully, but when I checked in on him, I found myself tucking the blanket a little higher around his shoulders. Over the following weeks, he helped repair what he could, repainting doors, replanting the neglected garden, even building a new display case for the few watches we recovered. It wasn't about replacing what was lost, it was about rebuilding something smaller, but honest. One afternoon, while we worked side by side, he said, "Dad would have hated what I did." I looked at him, meeting his eyes. He would have hated what you became, I said softly. But he'd be proud you're trying to change. The words surprised even me. They didn't erase the hurt, but they loosened something in my chest, a thread of compassion I thought I'd cut away for good. When the lawyer called a month later to confirm all documents were safely transferred back to my name, I felt the weight of finality settle in. I'd reclaimed my home, my security, my dignity. But forgiveness, that was different. Forgiveness isn't a transaction. It's a choice you make quietly, over and over, until the anger finally tires of being carried. That night, as the house rested in peace for the first time in months, I stood by the window, watching the moonlight spill across the floorboards. Richard's chair creaked softly behind me, as if the house itself sighed in relief. I whispered into the stillness, "He's trying, love. And maybe that's enough for now." The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was full of pain, of love, and the fragile hope that even broken things can find their shape again.